The orbital station hung above Proxima Tertius like a massive steel flower, its petals reaching out into the black void of space. Inside the central chamber, 12 species gathered around a circular table that glowed with soft blue light. This was the Galactic Council. And today, they had a problem to solve. Commander Zethlock stood at the head of the table. His scales reflected the chamber lights as he activated the holographic display. Images of human ships appeared in the air, rotating slowly so everyone could see them from all angles. "These are the human warships," Zethlock said, his voice translated into 12 different languages simultaneously. "As you can see, they are large, slow, and primitive." The council members leaned forward to study the images. The human ships looked like floating cities made of gray metal. They had none of the sleek curves or energy shimmer that marked advanced vessels. Instead, they bristled with angular gun barrels and missile tubes. Counselor Vrenna of the Sivari Collective touched her datapad, pulling up weapon specifications. "They use kinetic weapons? Metal projectiles fired by magnetic acceleration?" Her voice carried disbelief. "We abandoned such technology 3,000 years ago." Ended. 5. Please. "Exactly," Zethlock replied. He switched the display to show a human missile. "And these chemical rockets, with nuclear warheads? Museum pieces. Our shields can absorb plasma strikes that would vaporize a small moon. These primitive explosions will barely register." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Grand Arbiter Thalox, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, pulsed with amusement. "The humans have been expanding into our territory for 5 years now. They claim systems that belong to the Council by ancient right. We have been patient, but patience has limits. They don't understand their place," agreed Ambassador Krell of the Thornax Empire. His forearms gestured emphatically. "They arrived in this galaxy only 50 years ago and already act as if they own it. They need to be taught respect." 1. They need to be taught respect. Zethlock nodded and brought up a star map. A red circle marked the human colony of New Harrisburg. "I propose a demonstration. We send a fleet to this colony. We give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we destroy their orbital stations and military vessels. We show them the cost of defiance." "How many ships do the humans have at New Harrisburg?" asked Counselor Vrenna. 8 cruisers," Zethlock answered. "Our intelligence suggests this is one of their larger defensive formations. Their entire navy consists of perhaps 30 ships scattered across a dozen systems." More laughter. The Vorani hegemony alone maintained over 500 capital ships. The idea that humanity thought they could compete with 8 cruisers at a single colony was absurd. "I volunteer to lead the operation," Fleet Admiral Krethax announced. Rising from his seat, he was massive, even for his species, with armor plates that had been polished to a mirror shine. "Give me 47 capital ships. It will be more than enough to handle any resistance." Grand Arbiter Thelox considered this. 47 ships to face 8 human cruisers? Is that not excessive? "It sends a message," Krethax replied. "Overwhelming force. Undeniable superiority. When other human colonies see what happened at New Harrisburg, they will surrender without firing a shot. We will save lives in the long run. Thank you for watching." And 1-1. "We will surrender 1. The council voted. 12 hands, claws, tentacles, and energy fields rose in agreement. The decision was unanimous. Krethax would take his fleet to New Harrisburg. Humanity would learn its place in the galactic order. As the council members filed out of the chamber, discussing logistics and timelines, none of them noticed the small cargo vessel hovering at the edge of the station's sensor range. The ship was registered as the Times Broken Promise Asterisk, a human freighter making a delivery run to neutral territory. On the bridge, Captain Sarah Chen sat in her worn pilot's chair, watching the data stream across her screens. Her ship's passive sensors had recorded the entire council meeting. The galactic species were so confident in their superiority that they didn't bother encrypting their communications properly. Sarah pulled up the sensor data showing 47 Council ships beginning to gather at a staging point near the Proxima Nebula. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons that human scientists barely understood. Plasma cannons that could burn through asteroids. Graviton disruptors that could tear a ship apart at the molecular level. Phase shields that could shift partially out of normal space to avoid damage. She had seen Council ships in action once before, during a border skirmish. 3 Council vessels had destroyed a human mining station and its 12 defensive platforms in less than 2 minutes. It had been like watching adults fight children. Sarah's hands moved across her console, activating a communication system that looked like standard equipment, but was anything but standard. The quantum-entangled communicator would send her message instantly across any distance, bypassing normal space entirely. It was one of humanity's few technological advantages, and they kept it very secret. She typed a single word, "Incoming." The message burst outward faster than light, encoded and compressed, carrying with it all the sensor data she had gathered. Within seconds, it would reach Earth. Within minutes, people would start making decisions. Within hours, the trap would be set. Sarah Chen looked at the massive Council station one more time, then fired her ship's engines. The time's broken promise times turned away from Proxima Tertius and jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving only a brief distortion in space to mark its passage. Behind her, Fleet Admiral Krethax boarded his flagship, the Time's Eternal Dominion Asterisk. His crew was already preparing for departure. They loaded plasma batteries, calibrated shield generators, and ran combat drills. They were professionals, veterans of a dozen campaigns. They expected this mission to be easy. Not one of them suspected they had less than a week to live. The message reached Earth at 0347 hours, Greenwich Mean Time, in the depths of Cheyenne Mountain, buried under granite and steel. Computers registered the quantum burst and triggered alarms throughout the command center. Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb was in his office when the alert came through. He was a tall man, with gray hair and a face marked by too many years of making hard decisions. He walked quickly to the command center, where junior officers were already pulling up the data Sarah Chen had sent. 47 capital ships. Lieutenant Morrison reported, his voice tight with stress. ETA to New Harrisburg is 6 days. Sir, we only have 8 cruisers stationed there. I can count, Lieutenant. Webb replied calmly. He studied the holographic display, showing the Council fleet gathering near Proxima Nebula. Each ship was color-coded by type and capability. Red for heavy battleships, orange for carriers, yellow for cruisers. It looked like a forest fire spreading across the star map. The other Joint Chiefs arrived within minutes. General Yuki Tanaka came in still adjusting her uniform. Admiral Patricia Cole looked like she hadn't slept in days. Defense Minister Okonkwo appeared on a video screen from Geneva, his face grave. Options? Cole asked without preamble. We could evacuate New Harrisburg, suggested Tanaka. Get the civilians out before the Council arrives. And show weakness, Okonkwo countered. If we run from New Harrisburg, every other human colony becomes a target. We'll spend the next decade evacuating systems until we're pushed back to Earth. Webb remained silent, his fingers moving across his command tablet. He pulled up files that made several officers lean forward in surprise. The documents were marked with classification levels most of them had never seen before. There is another option, Webb said quietly. Protocol Archimedes. The room went silent. Lieutenant Morrison looked confused. General Tanaka's eyes widened in recognition and shock. Sir, Tanaka said carefully, Protocol Archimedes is Cold War doctrine. Those systems were designed when we barely had fusion drives. We retired them 40 years ago. They're obsolete. Webb looked up from his tablet, and his expression made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Obsolete. By whose standards, General? He activated the main display, and the star map changed. New Harrisburg appeared in the center, surrounded by hundreds of small icons that hadn't been visible before. Each icon was a weapons platform, and there were so many of them, they looked like a cloud of dust around the colony. For the past 80 years, Webb explained, humanity has been seeding our territory with defensive weapons. We learned during the Cold War that the best defense is one your enemy doesn't know exists until it's too late. We called them Kasaba howitzers. The display zoomed in on one icon. It looked like a communications satellite, battered and old, covered in micrometeor impacts and radiation scoring. Nothing worth a second glance. Each platform contains a nuclear device and focusing arrays. Webb continued. When detonated, the nuclear explosion is channeled into a beam of X-rays and gamma radiation, effectively, a nuclear-pumped laser. We scattered them throughout human space, disguised as old satellites, space junk, and derelict probes. Admiral Cole leaned forward. How powerful are they? Each beam carries the radiation output equivalent to a small star, focused into a lance roughly 1 meter wide and lasting 3 nanoseconds. At New Harrisburg alone, we have 463 platforms. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. 463 nuclear weapons, all aimed at the approaching Council fleet. The Council uses energy shields, Webb explained. Beautiful technology. They can deflect plasma, absorb kinetic impacts, and redirect particle beams, but they're transparent to hard radiation. X-rays and gamma rays pass right through them, as if the shields aren't even there. Lieutenant Morrison looked pale. Sir, won't this start a war? Lieutenant, the Council just voted to attack one of our colonies. The war has already started. They just don't know they've already lost it. Webb sent orders across the quantum network. At New Harrisburg, Colony Director James Okonkwo received the activation codes. He was a stocky man, with burn scars on his hands from his younger days as a ship engineer. He read the orders twice, then began evacuating civilians to the underground shelters. The shelters had been built into the largest asteroid in the system, hollowed out over 20 years, and reinforced with enough rock and metal to survive a direct nuclear strike. Okonkwo had told the colonists it was for protection against solar flares and micrometeorite storms. He had never told them the real reason. Captain Zhao Wei commanded the 8 human cruisers orbiting New Harrisburg. She was young for a captain, only 38. But she had graduated top of her class at the Naval Academy. Her ship, the Times Defiant Asterisk, was the pride of the small fleet. When Webb's orders arrived, Zhao called her senior officers to the bridge. We're not evacuating, she told them. We're going to defend this colony. Commander Petrov, her second officer, looked at the tactical display showing 47 incoming Council ships. Captain, with respect, how? We're outgunned 50-1, Zhao smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. We're not outgunned, Commander. We've just been pretending to be. She pulled up the deployment positions for the hidden weapons platforms. Our job isn't to destroy the Council fleet. Our job is to designate targets and coordinate fire. The 8 cruisers moved into a defensive formation that looked standard and predictable. Textbook tactics from any naval academy. The Council fleet, when it arrived, would see exactly what they expected to see: outnumbered human ships, making a brave but futile stand. They wouldn't see the real weapons until it was far too late. Back on Earth, Admiral Webb stood in the command center and watched the countdown timer. 6 days until the Council fleet arrived at New Harrisburg. 6 days until humanity showed the galaxy what obsolete really meant. Sir, Lieutenant Morrison asked quietly, what if this doesn't work? What if their shields can adapt? Webb looked at the young officer and thought about all the years of planning, all the resources spent hiding weapons in the dark, all the meetings where politicians called him paranoid for preparing for this exact scenario. Then we moved to Protocol Orion, Webb replied, and the galaxy learns why humanity kept building bigger bombs even after we left Earth. The Council fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of New Harrisburg's star system. 47 ships materialized from the twisted geometry of hyperspace, their hulls gleaming in the light of the distant sun. On the bridge of the Time's Eternal Dominion *, Fleet Admiral Creethax watched his tactical display populate with data. His sensors showed the human colony, the orbital stations, and the 8 human cruisers arranged in a defensive formation. They actually stayed, his tactical officer said with surprise. I thought they would run. 2. Creethax laughed, the sound coming out as a series of clicking vibrations. Bravery or stupidity? With humans, it's often hard to tell the difference. He studied the formation. 1. Subscribe. Deploy the fleet in standard envelopment pattern. Battleships forward, carriers in the second line, cruisers on the flanks, active shields to maximum. The Council fleet spread out like a net, each ship taking its assigned position. Energy shields flickered into existence, shimmering fields of force that warped space around each vessel. Plasma batteries began charging with a sound like distant thunder. Point defense systems came online, ready to intercept any missiles or projectiles. From the bridge of the Time's defiant *, Captain Zhao Wei watched the Council ships deploy. Her tactical officer was running constant updates on their positions, feeding data to the hidden weapons platforms scattered throughout the system. They're confident, Commander Petrov observed. Look at that formation. It's perfect for overwhelming a weaker force. But they're completely exposed to crossfire. They don't think we have anything that can hurt them, Zhao replied. She pulled up the communication channel. Let's give them one chance. Oh. The communication laser linked the Time's defiant times to the Time's Eternal Dominion *. Admiral Creethax appeared on Zhao's screen, his armored form towering over his bridge crew. Human Captain, Creethax said, his translated voice carrying amusement. I am Fleet Admiral Creethax, of the Galactic Council. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Power down your weapons, lower your shields, and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in the destruction of your ships and orbital stations. Zhao kept her face neutral. Admiral Creethax, I am Captain Zhao Wei of the Earth Navy. I'm asking you to withdraw from this system immediately. Turn your fleet around and leave. You don't understand what you're facing here. Creethax's laughter was genuine this time. Captain, I have 47 capital ships. You have 8 cruisers with weapons that were obsolete before my species learned to walk upright. Your railguns fire metal slugs. Your missiles carry primitive nuclear warheads. Our shields can withstand plasma strikes that carry more energy than your entire planet's power grid. I know what your intelligence reports say, Zhao replied calmly. They're wrong. Admiral, I'm giving you 30 seconds to jump your fleet out of this system. If you advance another kilometer, we will defend ourselves, and you will not survive. For a moment, Creethax's amusement faded. He studied the human captain's face, looking for signs of bluffing or fear. He saw neither. But then he looked at his tactical display, 47 council ships against 8 human cruisers, and the moment of doubt passed. You have spirit, Captain. I respect that. But spirit doesn't stop plasma cannons. He gestured to his weapons officer. All ships, advance. Prepare to fire on my command. The council fleet moved forward. A wall of metal and energy sliding through space. They were in no hurry. They had all the time in the world. On the Time's defiant *, Zhao watched the countdown timer. 20 seconds. 15. 10. Zhao watched the comper. Fire railguns, she ordered. The 8 human cruisers opened fire simultaneously. Magnetic accelerators hurled tungsten slugs at incredible velocities. The projectiles crossed the distance in seconds and impacted the council shields. The shields absorbed them easily. The solid rounds hit the energy barriers and vaporized into clouds of superheated gas. From Creethax's perspective, it looked like someone throwing rocks at a tank. Is that their best? His tactical officer asked, incredulous. Creethax shook his head slowly. He had fought dozens of battles, conquered 3 sectors, and faced weapons that could crack planets. Human railguns were less threatening than a child's toy. All ships, he broadcast. Prepare to return fire. Target their cruisers first, then the orbital stations. Make this quick and clean. Captain Zhao watched her railgun shots dissipate against the Council shields. She had expected that. The railguns weren't meant to damage the enemy. They were meant to make the Council think they had seen humanity's best weapon. She took a breath and spoke one word into her command channel. Archimedes. Throughout the New Harrisburg system, 463 weapons platforms received the activation signal. They were disguised as communication satellites, old telescopes, mining drones, and decades-old space debris. The Council sensors had cataloged them all as harmless junk, not worth a second glance. Now they came to life, each platform oriented toward a designated target. Nuclear devices began their detonation sequences. Focusing arrays aligned with precision, measured in nanometers. The platforms had been positioned over years, placed in orbits calculated to give optimal firing angles. Every Council ship was targeted by at least 10 platforms, and the 3 largest battleships were targeted by 30 each. On the Times Eternal Dominion asterisk, a junior sensor officer noticed something odd. "Sir, we're detecting power surges from multiple objects in the system. They appear to be 1. He never finished the sentence. 463 nuclear devices detonated simultaneously. Each explosion was channeled through focusing arrays made of exotic materials, compressed and directed into beams of hard radiation. The X-rays and gamma rays traveled at the speed of light, giving no warning, allowing no time to react. The Council shields, designed to stop plasma and particle weapons, were completely transparent to the radiation. The beams passed through the energy barriers as if they weren't there and struck the ship's hulls directly. Metal vaporized. Electronics fused. Organic matter burned. The radiation was so intense it didn't kill the crews. It erased them, breaking down their molecular bonds in microseconds. The Times Eternal Dominion Times took direct hits from 31 beams. Its hull was rated to survive in the corona of a star. It lasted 3 seconds. The armor plating boiled away, the reactor containment failed, and the ship turned into a brief sun as its power core went critical. All across the Council fleet, capital ships simply ceased to exist. They didn't explode dramatically. They didn't break apart. They vaporized, converted from solid matter to expanding clouds of plasma in the span of heartbeats. From the Times Defiant asterisk, Captain Zhao watched the tactical display. 44 enemy ships gone in the first salvo. 3 survivors, all of them positioned with the planet between them and most of the weapons platforms. Target the survivors, she ordered. Fire kinetics. Now the human cruisers revealed their real weapons. What the Council thought were railguns were actually relativistic kinetic launchers. Tungsten projectiles the size of telephone poles were accelerated to 90% of light speed. At those velocities, mass and energy became the same thing. When the projectiles hit, they released more energy than the nuclear weapons that had launched them. The first surviving Council ship took a direct hit and simply disappeared, converted instantly to plasma. The second ship broke in half, its 2 sections spiraling away into the system's star. The third ship managed to jump to faster than light speed, but it was missing half its stern section. Atmosphere and bodies spilled out into the void as it vanished into hyperspace. 47 Council ships had entered the New Harrisburg system. 0 survived. The battle had lasted 47 seconds from the first weapons platform activation to the last Council ship's destruction. In those 47 seconds, the galaxy changed forever. On the Council orbital station above Proxima Tertius, the diplomatic corps gathered in the central chamber once again. This time, there was no laughter. The holographic displays showed the telemetry from Krethax's fleet right up until the moment the signals stopped. Grand Arbiter Thelox watched the replay for the 5th time, his crystalline form pulsing with colors that indicated deep distress. The video showed the Council fleet advancing confidently, the human cruisers firing their primitive railguns, And then, light. Everywhere. All at once. 44 capital ships converting to expanding spheres of plasma in less time than it took to blink. The sensors couldn't even track what killed them. The energy signatures were off the scale. Nuclear weapons, Counselor Vrenna said, her voice hollow. She had been analyzing the data for hours. But not like anything in our databases. They channeled the explosions, focused them into directed energy beams. How is that possible? Ambassador Krell demanded. His forearms gestured wildly. Nuclear weapons are omnidirectional. Primitive. Inefficient. You can't focus them. Apparently, you can, Vrenna replied. She pulled up schematics her science team had reconstructed from the brief sensor data. They used something called Kasaba howitzer technology. The humans developed it centuries ago, back when they were still confined to their own solar system. We all assumed they abandoned it when they developed more advanced weapons. They didn't abandon it, Commander Zethlock said quietly. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past few hours. They improved it. They scattered these weapons throughout their territory. Our intelligence counted over 400 platforms at New Harrisburg alone. The implications settled over the room like a heavy blanket. If New Harrisburg had 400 platforms, how many did Earth have? How many were scattered through the dozen other human colonies? Thousands? Tens of thousands? They let us think they were weak, Grand Arbiter Thalok said, his voice carrying something that might have been respect or fear. They showed us railguns and missiles, obsolete technology, and we assumed that was all they had. We never looked deeper. Vrenna pulled up a new analysis on the main display. It gets worse. I've been running production estimates. These weapons, nuclear devices, focusing arrays, basic targeting systems, they're actually easier to manufacture than our plasma cannons or graviton disruptors. Humans can build them using basic industrial infrastructure. They don't need exotic matter or specialized energy manipulation technology. She let that sink in for a moment. Our weapons require resources that only a few species can produce. Human weapons can be built by anyone, with access to fissile material and basic manufacturing. In a prolonged war, they could outproduce us 10 to 1. Ambassador Krell slammed one of his fists on the table. This is unacceptable. We are the Galactic Council. We have ruled this sector for 10,000 years. We cannot allow a species of primitives to what? Vrenna interrupted sharply. To destroy our fleets? They already did that. To threaten our colonies? With these weapons, they could sterilize any world we have. To force us into a war we cannot win? She's right, said a new voice. Counselor Thane, of the Crevan Alliance, had been silent until now. He was old, even by his species' long-lived standards, and he had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. I have reviewed the human combat doctrine. They don't fight for territory or resources. They fight for survival. Every system they control is a fortress. Every habitat is a bunker. They prepare for the worst and hope for the best. He activated a map showing human space. Look at their expansion pattern. They don't claim the most valuable systems. Systems that can be turned into killing fields. Grand Arbiter Thalok studied the map. You're saying they've been preparing for this since they first left their planet. I'm saying they never stopped being afraid, Thane replied. Earth nearly destroyed itself multiple times before they achieved space travel. They spent centuries on the edge of self-annihilation. Nuclear weapons, biological weapons, climate collapse. They survived all of it. And the lesson they learned wasn't, weapons are bad. The lesson was, we need bigger weapons and better hiding places. Vrenna pulled up another display. I analyzed the 3 ships that attempted to flee. 2 were destroyed by what the humans call relativistic kinetic kill vehicles. Solid projectiles accelerated to 90% of light speed. Do you understand what that means? Quote, she didn't wait for an answer. At those velocities, A telephone pole carries more destructive energy than a fusion bomb. Our shields can't stop them because they're not energy weapons, they're just mass moving very fast. And unlike our weapons, they don't require power cores or exotic particles, just a very good magnetic accelerator. How do we fight them? Commander Zethlock asked. His scales had lost their luster. He looked defeated. We don't, Counselor Thane said simply. Look at the mathematics. They have weapons that bypass our shields, are easier to produce than ours, and can be deployed in numbers we can't match. They've seeded their entire territory with defensive platforms we can't see until they activate. Every battle in human space is a trap. Every advance is a potential massacre. We have 500 capital ships, Ambassador Krell protested weakly. They have perhaps 30 visible vessels. 47 of our ships just died in less than a minute, Vrenna countered. If we sent our entire fleet to attack Earth, how many would survive? Half? A quarter? And at what cost? If we destroy humanity, we destroy ourselves in the process. Mutual annihilation. That's their strategy. Grand Arbiter Thelox dimmed his lights, a sign of deep thought. We assumed that advanced meant superior. We believed our energy weapons and phase technology made us invincible. We forgot that war isn't about elegance. It's about making the enemy die. He looked around the chamber at the assembled council members. The humans haven't forgotten. They optimized their weapons for one purpose: killing. Not elegance, not efficiency, not minimal collateral damage. Just death. Delivered as quickly and overwhelmingly as possible. So what do we do? Asked Ambassador Krell. We do what any intelligent species does when faced with a threat they cannot defeat, Thelox replied. We negotiate. The chamber fell silent. The idea of the Galactic Council negotiating as equals with a species they had dismissed as primitive was almost inconceivable. But the alternative war with humanity was worse than inconceivable. It was suicide. Draft a message to Earth, Thelox ordered. Inform them that the attack on New Harrisburg was unauthorized. Tell them we wish to discuss a non-aggression pact and formal recognition of their territorial claims. They'll know we're lying about the authorization, Vrenna pointed out. Of course they will, Thelox agreed. But they'll also know we're afraid. And fear, Counselor, is the foundation of peace. 3 weeks after the Battle of New Harrisburg, Ambassador Elena Volkov stood in the central chamber of the Galactic Council station. She was a tall woman with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her suit was dark blue, with no decorations except for a small pin showing the Earth and Moon. The council chamber was full. All 12 species had sent their highest representatives. Security forces lined the walls. Though everyone knew that if shooting started, security forces wouldn't matter. Humanity had already proven it could destroy council fleets anywhere in this sector. Elena waited as the translation systems calibrated. When the ready light appeared, she began speaking. 3 weeks ago, this council voted to attack one of our colonies. You sent 47 capital ships to New Harrisburg with orders to destroy our defenses and force our surrender. Those 47 ships are gone. Their crews are dead. This was not murder. This was defense. You attacked us. We responded. Grand Arbiter Thelox's crystal form pulsed with acknowledgement. Ambassador Volkov, we have reviewed what happened at New Harrisburg. We understand that our intelligence underestimated your defensive capabilities. We are prepared to offer compensation for... Compensation? Elena's voice cut through his like a knife. Arbiter, you tried to exterminate a human colony. 15,000 civilians, including children. You thought you could kill them without consequence because you believed we were weak. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. It showed a Kasaba howitzer platform in detail, every component labeled and explained. You want to know what defeated your fleet? Here it is. A nuclear device, focusing arrays made of tungsten and graphite, and a basic targeting computer. Technology we developed 300 years ago. Technology that any species with basic manufacturing can build. The display changed, showing a relativistic kinetic launcher. And this, a magnetic accelerator strong enough to push a tungsten rod to 90% of light speed. When something that heavy hits something else at that speed, the universe doesn't care about your shields or your armor. Physics takes over, and physics doesn't negotiate. Elena walked around the chamber as she spoke, making eye contact with each council member. You called our weapons obsolete. You were right. We built these systems during our Cold War, when we were preparing to destroy ourselves. We improved them, miniaturized them, and scattered them throughout our territory. Every human system has hundreds of these platforms. Earth alone has over 5,000. Counselor Vrenna leaned forward. Ambassador, you're describing a doomsday network. If those weapons were ever used all at once, they would sterilize this entire sector. Elena finished calmly. Yes, we know. That's the point. The chamber erupted in protests and shocked exclamations. Ambassador Krell stood up, all four arms raised. This is madness. You're threatening to destroy everything. No, Elena corrected. We're promising mutual destruction if attacked. There's a difference. You thought you were superior because you moved past weapons like ours. You developed elegant energy weapons and beautiful shield technology. You forgot the lesson that Earth learned the hard way. She paused, and the chamber fell silent. The universe doesn't care about elegance. It cares about survival. You evolved in a galaxy where being strong meant you could dominate others. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, and eventually ourselves. We learned to fight everything, including each other. For millions of years, Earth tried to kill us. We survived by being stubborn, adaptable, and violent when necessary. When we finally left our planet, we didn't forget those lessons. We just applied them on a bigger scale. Grand Arbiter Thelox's lights flickered in a pattern Elena's translator identified as careful consideration. Ambassador, what are you proposing? Are you threatening us? No, Arbiter, I'm educating you. Elena brought up a new display, showing human and council territory. We don't want your systems. We don't want to rule your species. We want to be left alone to develop in peace. The problem is that you assumed we were weak, and weakness invites aggression, so we're showing you what we can do. Not as a threat, but as a fact. Attack us, and we will defend ourselves, and our defense will be absolute. We will turn every battle into a mutual suicide. We will make it impossible for you to win without losing everything. Counselor Thane spoke up, his ancient voice carrying clearly through the translation system. This is the doctrine of deterrence. Make the cost of aggression higher than any possible benefit. Exactly, Elena agreed. It kept us from destroying ourselves for centuries. Now it will keep the galaxy from destroying us. But what's to stop you from attacking us? Ambassador Krell demanded. If you have these weapons, what prevents you from using them for conquest? Elena smiled, and it was a tired expression. Because we've already seen what happens when humans fight humans. We nearly destroyed our own planet 3 times. We know exactly how terrible these weapons are. We don't want to use them. But we will, if we must. She deactivated the displays and stood at the center of the chamber. The Council has 2 choices. You can recognize us as equals, respect our territorial claims, and negotiate with us in good faith, or you can try to destroy us, and we will take you with us into extinction. Those are your options. The silence stretched out for long seconds. Finally, Grand Arbiter Thelox spoke. What guarantees can you offer that these weapons won't be used offensively? The same guarantee you offer us, Elena replied. None. We trust that you're rational enough to not commit suicide. You'll have to trust that we are too. Counselor Vrenna accessed her datapad, then looked up. Ambassador, one question. If what you've shown us is your obsolete weapon technology from 300 years ago, what do your modern weapons do? Elena's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes made several council members shift uncomfortably. "Counselor, you'll never need to find out. That's the entire point of deterrence. As long as you don't attack us, you'll never see what we've built in the last 3 centuries. And if someone else attacks you?" Counselor Thane asked. "What if a species outside the council tries to conquer human space? Then they'll learn the same lesson you did," Elena said simply. "We look peaceful. We are peaceful, when given the choice. But we never, ever forget how to fight." The council voted that evening. The measure passed. Humanity would be granted full council membership. Their territorial claims would be recognized, and a non-aggression pact would be signed with verification protocols. On Earth, Admiral Webb watched the vote on a secure channel from Cheyenne Mountain. His officers applauded, relief evident on their faces. But Webb remained quiet. Lieutenant Morrison noticed. "Sir, we won. Isn't that good news?" Webb looked at the star map showing Earth and its colonies. "We didn't win, Lieutenant. We just convinced them that winning would cost too much. That's not the same thing." 17. Thanks for watching. Subscribe with using and held 10 alive 16. With using like that web. We have then Resire. Thanks for watching. What's the difference? The difference is that they'll be watching us now, studying us, looking for weaknesses. And someday, maybe in 10 years, or 100, or 1,000, someone will decide that the cost is acceptable. Someone will find a way to bypass our defenses. And when that happens, we'll need to be ready with something they haven't imagined yet. Morrison was quiet for a moment. "So we keep building? Keep preparing? Always." Webb confirmed. "That's the price of survival." Far from Earth, in deep space between the stars, a human exploration vessel detected something on its long-range sensors. The science team studied the object for hours before realizing what they had found: an ancient weapons platform from a civilization that predated the Council by thousands of years. The technology was incomprehensible, operating on principles that human science couldn't explain. Preliminary scans suggested it could destabilize stars or create localized black holes, a weapon that made human nukes look like children's fireworks. The ship's captain, Commander Jessica Torres, stared at the scan results while her science officer practically vibrated with excitement. "Captain, if we could study this, understand how it works, we could leap forward centuries. Imagine what we could build with this technology." Torres was quiet for a long moment, thinking about New Harrisburg, about 47 destroyed ships, about the fear in the Council's response. She thought about Admiral Webb's tired eyes and the weight of being the species everyone was afraid of. "Log the coordinates," she finally ordered. "Mark it as a navigation hazard. We're leaving it alone." "But Captain, we're already dangerous enough, Lieutenant. Maybe more dangerous than we should be. Just because we can build something doesn't mean we should." The ship turned away from the ancient weapon and jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving it drifting alone in the dark. Behind them, the weapon continued its billion-year orbit, untouched and unknown. A reminder that some wars were won not by having the biggest weapons, but by having the wisdom to know when not to use them. And in the cold mathematics of the galaxy, that wisdom might be humanity's greatest weapon of all.